Hi everybody, it's Mr. Shakowski putting together an instructions video here for our 13th geography bulletin um, of this term. And this bulletin has been created to try, at least, to cover all the different activities that we'll be doing in our Unit 4, our final couple of weeks of school in our course here. So it is several pages long and requires you to read very carefully and basically follow the instructions in the order that they're given. This is modeling on the same sort of style of instructions that the last several bulletins have been using. So there shouldn't be much that is new here for people who have been following us and following along. But I do want to start by mentioning that the intent here and the reason why it's taken me as long as it has to put this out is that I have put together a series of activities that are meant to cover this entire unit. All the major pieces that we would normally be learning in this unit are here somehow in some way. So we're going to get going here, and I'm going to use the rest of this video basically to show you where all these pieces are located. The instructions on how to use them are written in great detail here in this email, in this Word document. And there will be a hyperlink here as soon as this video is done. I will link it to this bit of words here, and you'll be able to watch me take you through this. You'll probably end up having to go back to the video more than once to allow you to sort of focus on one part of the instructions at a time. Okay, my intent here is to make one video for the entire bulletin, even though this is going to be several days worth of learning and activities. Okay, so first of all then, really what it's time to sort of understand is that for the first time in a long time, we are now moving into a very different sort of area of study in our course. We've spent the bulk of our course since spring break, at least, exploring the concept of natural resources and all kinds of different activities and case studies related to that topic. And Unit 4 is meant to focus on cities and industry. And as a part of that, what we are going to focus on when we study cities, especially, is also the concept of how those cities generate the energy that they need to run. Same for industry, for factories and such. And related to that is the concept of climate change. We've saved this topic till the end of the year. It is well, I don't know how arguable it is, but it's certainly arguable, maybe a bit, that this is the most important topic and issue of our time, and it is not by accident that we are asking you to consider climate change and humans' role in it and the impact of it. It is likely that this topic, this issue, will shape our lives in the coming decades to a large extent. And so it, along with the concept of ecological footprint, I would say are kind of intertwined as the two most important things that we could possibly have taught you this year in geography. And so here we are, ending with that topic. Now, there's a bunch of instructions here, which I'm not going to start reading through. I will let you read them carefully. My recommendation is that you read them out loud to yourself so that your ears get a chance to hear what it is I'm saying, as well as your eyes get to read it. And this gives your brain two different paths to accept this information and understand it. Okay. And again, as always, if you run into some questions along the way, or you're not sure what these instructions mean or what they're referring to or how they work, well, that's when you can email me, or you can save up your questions for our classes that we will continue to have on Wednesdays for the next couple of weeks still. Okay. So there is a preamble here that I've written out that just gets us to start thinking about what it means to be living in a city, what an urban area is, and a bit of the history of how urbanization, which is sort of the growth of cities, how that has evolved and how it's changed over time. And then we introduce you to a term called megacities here, and these are cities that have 10 million or more people living in them. And so this is something that many of us haven't experienced in our lives. If you've grown up in Winnipeg, then we're in a very sort of mid to small size city compared to many in the world. And so the idea of what a megacity is, how they've grown over time, and what they're like is something that we wanted to touch base on, because many people in the world live in cities far bigger than Winnipeg, and cities that size come with their own set of issues and lifestyle concerns and just things to think about a little bit now. So that's sort of where we're going to start, is with a little bit of look at what cities are, some terminology around them, a look at the growth of megacities in the world through history, and most recently where all the big megacities of the world seem to be popping up. Where are most of the megacities now located in the world? And these are all things you'll be exploring over the next few days with the different activities. Now, there's a big here, I hope this is as important as I can make it. I have bolded it and underlined it and shaded it to make sure that it is clear to you that you will need to open up a file for yourself, a Unit 4 reflections log file. This is very similar to the water reflections that I asked you to do earlier in the term. And this reflection log is something that I want you to have the ability to turn to record any of your thoughts or learning or questions along the way. And there are times where I will ask you to think about some things through these different activities, and unless it is very clearly asking you to answer your questions in your textbook notes or video notes, or use this template to write some notes from an article or something like that, then I'm assuming that you're going to be recording your thoughts and learning in this reflections log, and I'm calling it Unit 4 reflections log, so that it can be about cities and megacities, it can be about climate change, and it can be about energy generation, because those are the three sort of pillars of this unit. Okay, so again, that's instructions you need to read carefully and open up that file and save it and get it started and ready. And then anytime you're answering any questions that have to do with activities 1 or 2, then you'll be able to or 3 or 4 or 5 for that matter, you'll be able to just say activity 1, and the notes that go in that are coming from the questions that I'm asking you in this activity then. Okay. So in activities 1 and 2 are really about cities and megacities and global trends and urban growth, and we're going to learn some terminology, and we're going to learn some locations and some categories of cities and trends. And so all of that is sort of setting the scene. Activity 1 is really these parts here, 1A and B, and then activity 2 starts down here. It's slightly different. It's mostly using your textbook. So again, there are a whole bunch of different files that are accessible on our website. Here, let me just let me see if I can open up our website here. There we go. Okay, so our website, for the first time now, what we'll be doing is moving into Unit 4. This is critical because what I'm referencing in the instructions on that document, I'm calling it, use file number 1 or 1.1 or 1.2 or whatever, and all the way down to file 13 is mentioned. And we're not using every one of these files, as has been the case all year. There's going to be some pieces we just need to cut and leave out because of time constraints. So I've tried my best to make sure we cover what I would consider to be the most important and foundational and fundamental things about this topic. And so that's where we're at here. Oops, I've clicked something by accident. We're going to go back to just our main website. Okay, so the textbook study notes, for example, are right here, and you will need to download them to your computer. Remember, you do that by going over here to these 3 dots, and then when it says show actions, you can download them to your own computer. Once you have a copy saved in your own computer, then you can open that copy and record your notes in it and save it to yourself, etc. And it becomes a place to record your thoughts and learning. There are textbook chapters and pieces of textbook that you'll need to be able to answer those questions, and if you don't have your textbook at home, then that's where these are. There's also a map key that I've posted here about some of the megacities of the world, and rather than having you try to fumble through and make a map online, I'm just giving you the map that was created of some of the major megacities from just a few years ago, where they're located, and then there's some questions that I'm asking you to consider along the way. So there are, activity one here has part A and part B. Part B, for example, starts off with just click this link to watch a short video. So some of your instructions or some of the links here are right in these in this Geo Bulletin. And when you watch that short video, I'm asking you to think of a couple of questions and answer them in your reflections file, your reflections log. Okay, so once we've sort of started thinking about megacities and what they are and watched a little video about what they can be like, then it's time for us to start using our textbook and our textbook study notes to learn a bit more specifically about some terminology and concepts. And so there's some instructions here. I'm reminding you that there's an answer key to these textbook study notes, TBSN, so that if you get into trouble, you're stuck, or you want to double check your answers after you've tried making them first, just to make sure that you're on the right track, you'll be able to access your textbook study notes. Answer key is down here at the bottom. Okay, as other than the fact that that answer key is down at the bottom, all the other files that I'm asking you to use, generally we are going in order chronologically here from top down to bottom. So we're starting out here with some textbook study notes, and then we're learning a little bit about terms like urban and rural, and we're going to eventually learn about categories of cities using this PowerPoint. And so when I mention, use file number 3, well, that I'm using this line here of numbers to quickly allow you to locate where these files are. Okay. So activities 1 and 2 are all about cities, megacities, and a bunch of terminology and concepts related to those. Then what happens is it's time for us to transition into the first of our 2 big topics, and that's global warming and climate change. And so I want to remind you that while I am mostly focusing your attention here on the files that are in our documents library, I do want to remind you that there is a useful class websites library, or a links library I sometimes call it, and there are some great links in the Unit 4 folder that are some of them are connected to what we're already doing. They're embedded into PowerPoints that you're going to watch, but there is some extra ones here that are definitely worth looking at if you find yourself with some extra time or have a particular interest in one of the topics that we're looking at. So there's a whole bunch of things here on climate change and global warming, a little bit on world megacities, and then some stuff towards the end on different types of energy generation, which is the same order that we're generally exploring these topics in the next few days. So I want to remind you that there are multiple links here to videos and documentaries and a few other websites that are definitely worth exploring. If you have time, or if something catches your eye and you're interested in exploring more. Okay, so when it comes to activities 3 and 4 and 5, what you are in essence doing is being asked to use different files from our website. I'm going to go back to our main website here and down to our Documents Library, Unit 4, and what you start to see then is there are a number of different files, and whenever one of them is very closely related to the other, like for example, there's some notes here on climate controls, and in particular the greenhouse effect. And then there is a diagram that goes with that is very related to that. And so 6 and 6.1 are why the numbering system, folds up that way. Okay. If it's something quite different, like for example, a set of film notes about a video called The Truth About Global Warming, well, that's file number 7. And there is an answer key, an answer guide to that video notes guide so that you can refer to it when you're finished, take a look and see if you've missed anything, or if you've struggled, or if you want to sort of add some additional notes to make sure you've got the right degree of depth and detail to your answers. So all of the files you'll be needing are all in this area here, and the numbering system is there. You will be asked to where are we? Activity 3. So you will be asked to look at a PowerPoint and then there's some notes that go with that PowerPoint that I have pre-made for you. So you don't have to make the notes, you just have to refer to them as the PowerPoint is going. And along the way, there's some links in that PowerPoint that are definitely worth watching. They're great, great little videos that will help visualize what the PowerPoint is trying to teach. Okay, so there's a lot of explanation in these notes that you've got here in this Word document. Please read it carefully. Do one activity at a time, and when you're done, then move to the next one. And if you have to go back and watch this video to help you remember where certain things are, then you can do that. Activity 4 is geared around watching a video called The Truth About Global Warming. It's the longest video that we'll watch in the year. It is arguably the best. It's the most visually stunning. It's one of the most recent videos that we've come up with, and it's about global warming and the science behind it and the impact that it's having on the Earth. And even though it was made several years ago now, it still stands the test of time in terms of its visual capacity. It's a brilliantly made, lovely video that was put together by a cooperation between the CBC and the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, and they put their money together to make one really good video between the two of them, I think is the way you would sort of understand that. Okay, so after you're finished the video and the video notes guide, then there's just some final pieces, I call them. And these pieces are subdivided up into activity 5, A, B, C, D. And your final job is to sort of finalize your reflections log and come up with several major technological and behavioral changes that society is going to have to make in order to lower our carbon footprint and lessen the severity of global warming in the future. So this is like a little miniature version of how you did your eco footprint logs and your eco footprint, where you had to talk about what can we do as a society and as individuals to lower our footprint. Well, now we're talking very much about carbon footprints, because that's what's creating the majority of the type of air pollution that is creating climate change. And you're going to learn more about that in activities 3 and 4. So I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on this. That is why you're doing these in a certain order. Okay, and so then we get to the last couple of activities, and these ones don't have quite as much in the way of detail, but I think they're self-explanatory, and you should be used to by now being told to go and do some questions from the textbook study notes and use this file to help you do that question. So I will let these instructions sort of explain what it is you need to do, but basically we're going to end with a look at energy generation and how the world gets its energy. For the most part, there is a growing type of energy, more renewable sources of energy that are being used more and more by some parts of the world. But unfortunately, the majority of our electricity is still generated by sources that create or contribute to climate change and global warming. And so this topic is very much intertwined with climate change. They're meant to sort of be dovetailing together. We are going to focus on hydroelectric power in these notes and in these questions, because that's the type of power that doesn't contribute to climate change and is in fact the way that Manitoba makes almost all of its electricity. And so that's a feather in our cap in terms of how Manitobans have a lower footprint right off the bat, because when we turn our light switches on, we are not using electricity that had to come from burning fossil fuels. So there's some diagrams and notes that are meant to help explain how a hydroelectric dam works, and HEP stands for hydroelectric power. So if you see those 3 letters anywhere, I want to make sure you understand what they mean. And then again, there's a little bit more of an analysis of the benefits and the drawbacks of these different forms of energy. And so, for example, I'll go and find that particular file. And when you open this one up, you find that there are several parts of it that have this bright blue font and writing and underline. These are hyperlinks. When you hover over them, you'll see there's a YouTube address that comes up. So you're going to want to watch these videos, starting with this first one, the title. And these different videos will explain to you a little bit. One of them is not a video. I think it's a website that talks about different alternative energy sources like solar and wind generation and other methods. But the 3 that I'm asking you to do do a comparison contrast of and do some advantages and pros and cons of each are thermal electricity, nuclear electricity, and hydroelectricity. And you're going to learn about those three when you do some textbook study notes to start, and you're going to learn a lot more about them when you fill in the notes on this document and you watch the videos that are attached to each of these little headings here. Okay, so these blue links are hyperlinks to explore. Okay, so at this point I am going to end our video. We're getting close to 20 minutes here of explanation. I'm hoping that this has helped, but fundamentally it's very important that you're reading the instructions carefully as you go along to find out where these files are located and how to use them in what order. This is probably the way we are going to end our course, everybody. I will find, we'll figure out whether there's time to squeeze another activity or two in that final week of the 15th, but for right now I'm expecting that you will be finishing these different activities off and then handing in your reflections log to me by Monday, June 15th. So you've got a nice long stretch of time here to organize yourselves and how quickly or slowly you do these different activities. But this is meant to be 6 or 7 days worth of activities here for sure. Okay, and so how quickly or slowly you want to do them is somewhat up to you, as it has been all along when we send out these geo bulletins the way we do. But we will be having classes both in the coming days and in next week about this bulletin, and these are the times where you can come to me with questions about anything you've heard me say or anything I've written here that doesn't make sense, and we can clarify them during our class time. Okay, so at this point I'm gonna say sayonara, and we will talk to you all soon at our next class, which is on Wednesday at the usual time. Thanks everybody. Take care.